Hey book club babblers, I'm Mary Sullivan here with Beverly Jenkins, the Nora Roberts Lifetime Achievement Award winner 2017. Beverly has written 30 plus novels. She has done historical, YA, romantic suspense, and modern
contemporary.
Yeah, contemporary family.
Oh, and women's fiction, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
A little bit of everything.
A little everything. You wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Now, we're book club babble, and you are actually our first romance writer.
Oh, okay.
So, we were wondering, can you tell book club people out there, and we actually are not restricted to only book club books.
Okay,
We
yeah.
love anything that is well written, a story well told. But what can you tell book club people about the romance genre? Like, what can they get out of it? What could they bring? What are they missing? What could they bring to a book club?
They can bring the largest selling genre in fiction. We brought $1.8 billion to the table last year.
No big deal.
No big deal.
No big deal.
We're going to the bank. Stories that are diverse, stories that offer hope, stories that offer love, stories that offer women's empowerment of their own sexuality. Just great stories. And anybody who turns their nose up at romance probably hasn't read one.
I couldn't possibly agree more. I mean, when I think of you though, I really think historical, as I'm sure a lot of people do. And something that your agent last night when she was introducing you for the Lifetime Achievement Award, she said that you offer tasty nuggets of historical facts.
Yeah.
And I feel that way so much reading your stuff. And I think that a lot of people who like romance sometimes get into historicals because they feel like they learn a little something.
Yeah, I call it edutainment.
I like edutainment.
Entertainment
It really
and
is.
education. So, I mean, it's all about learning stuff, not the sex scenes or any of that. But
That can
you know,
teach some people.
Well, that can teach some people too. Some people need that. But stories about African Americans and other people of color that you may not have learned in school. Harriet Tubman's Spy Ring. I mean, everybody knows she came down and stole slaves, but not many people know that she worked as a spy for the Union Army during the Civil War.
Yeah.
The black and brown outlaws of Indian Territory.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could expand on that actually, because the Black Seminoles play a pretty big role in some of your books, and I was wondering where that came. I was really anxious to ask you about that.
Well, the Seminole Wars, up until Vietnam, were the largest. They spent the most money. The United States spent the most money with the Seminole Wars up until Vietnam.
Wow.
The natives did not want them taking their land.
Wow.
So I think there were 3 Seminole Wars. I have to look that up. I don't remember. But they finally petitioned to the Supreme Court to keep their land, and Andrew Jackson was like, no.
He wasn't known for.
No, he wasn't known for being very friendly to people of color. So that was where the Trail of Tears started. They made them walk from the South to Oklahoma. So the Black Seminoles were given their own little piece of Indian Territory along with what they called the 5 civilized tribes. And but they were given land next to their enemies.
Oh yeah.
The Crows. So
Colonial problem.
yeah. So they wound up, some of them wound up, doing their own long march from Oklahoma down to Mexico, and wound up settling down there. The U.S. Army offered them positions if they would fight the Native Americans on the border.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
The United States never met a treaty that it kept. So these people wound up being deserted down there and left to poverty, but the Mexican government took them in. So the Black Seminoles the Seminoles in general and the Black Seminoles have a great history here in the United States. So I like to take those stories that we may not know of, and stories in places where African Americans actually walked. So I don't have to make any of this stuff up.
Right. I mean, that not having to make it up is, and I mean, I found it so fascinating. You had an interview in NPR a couple years back, and you said, and I thought it was hilarious, that what we know of African American story is slavery, and then the Borg took them, and then they were replaced for civil rights, and then but like Henry Adams, Kansas, I had no idea, and I'm sure many other people don't, that it was was a town for
Yeah.
and created by.
Yeah, after the Civil War and Reconstruction was killed by, the return of white supremacy to the South. It got so ugly for people of color, black people, that they migrated west, not north in the Great Migration in 1900, but it was the Great Exodus of 1879. So they went west and they founded these little bitty towns on the plains of Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, some went to California. And the most famous one in Kansas is a place called Nicodemus. And so that's where I took the factual town, turned it into my fictional town, using the same kinds of things for my very first novel, Night Song. And I named it Henry Adams, after a man who was very, very instrumental in that migration, who has also been lost through time. I called it Henry Adams, and then my first women's fiction book is set also in Henry Adams.
The Blessed series?
The Blessing series, 150 years later. So you have descendants in the women's fiction book who were originally, their ancestors are in the first couple of historicals. So that's the hook.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that. I mean, your new book that just came out does that exact same thing.
Yeah, Chasing Down a Dream.
Yeah, Chasing Down a Dream, women's fiction.
Yeah, it's book 8 in that series.
Right, and I think that for people that are maybe more used to, however you might define a book club book, that idea of having this long family saga, that's really so much of what's in book club, like getting at those stories of family and heart. And for myself, I think it's interesting the layered like race issues, like you have the foster care system in this latest one. Do you have any special interest in the foster care system?
Yeah, well, the book originally started when you read book 1. It's all about adoption, and I'm an adopted parent too. Book 1, when Bernadine Brown buys the little destitute town of Henry Adams with her divorce proceedings
on eBay.
On eBay. She brings in these 5 at-risk kids, and it's based on a true incident that I read in Parade magazine probably 30 years ago. A place called Hope. It was an academic in the Midwest who got the government to let her have an abandoned Air Force base.
Oh, just her as a person.
She gave him a proposal, and what she wanted to do was bring in at-risk kids and senior citizens, and have the senior citizens raise these kids. It was awesome.
They should bring that back.
Yeah, and it was called a place called Hope, and I'm not sure what the real name of the town was, but this was the article. And so, as a writer, you run across little neat kinds of things like this, and you put it away. And so when I started to do this series, looking through my stuff and looking through the partials that all writers have, I ran across myself, this would be great. And then I had to choose between where I wanted to put it.
Right.
Because I've created a small town in Michigan. Called Grace Groves on the western coast over by Niles and Benton Harbor, and Henry Adams in Kansas. So the more I thought about it, the more July's came to mind, which is one of the families in Henry Adams. And so I decided to put it in Henry Adams. And that's where our story starts, and we have these 5 kids, and we have foster parents, and 8 stories later, we're still finding out stuff,
Oh, yeah.
It's a great series. But when I first began with the first book, I got tons of letters from foster parents, adoptive parents, foster kids, adopted kids. They sent me pictures. I did a lot of crying.
Oh.
To that first book.
Yeah.
So the series has been awesome. We've done 1 book a year. I'm going to be writing book 9 pretty soon.
Wow.
Yeah, find out what's going to happen.
Right.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, everyone.
Stay tuned, America.
But you're also doing westerns at the same time.
I'm doing a historical. Yeah, I do 2 books a year.
Okay.
I do 1 romance a year and 1 women's fiction.
Okay.
So I'm in the 3rd book of this Old West series about a woman who's a mail-order bride who's going to Wyoming and thinks everything's going to be nice and smooth, and no, not that easy. So I think it's one of the joys of writing romance is that you can touch so many people with your stories, I don't know if you have seen the documentary Love Between the Covers.
Yes.
You know, that's
Beverly's featured in it.
Yeah, and a lot of other authors are featured
Mm-hmm.
in it too. But it's a great look at the industry, and it dispels a lot of the myths about, you know, who we are, what we write, and why we write what we do.
Mm-hmm.
The women's engine of capitalism.
Yeah, and you know, being for any of you guys out there who don't know, we're here at the Romance Writers of America conference, and it is an incredible organization, 10,000, and it's primarily women.
Yes,
I hate to forget about our male brothers out there, but there are very few.
Yeah.
And it's run by, it's powered by all women, and there are probably 2,000 of us. And you look into that. Well, you gave us the address last night, so you did look into the sea of women, and it's really, it's incredible.
It's incredible, the support, the ability to teach.
Yes.
You're not going to find many writing conferences that offer the variety and levels of craft and all of that we offer here. It's a great organization. It's opening itself up to self-published authors, digital books, ebooks. So, you know, it can only get better.
Oh, I agree. Like, we're Book Club Babel we're kind of, our thing is 6 women who read, write, and so the writing part is really important to all 6 of us who are part of it. And this organization is so incredible in the way that people share industry information. People who are such as yourselves make time for other people. It's a really incredible organization, and it's a great place to find wonderful books and about female empowerment.
Yeah, we are in charge.
Yeah, we are definitely in charge.
Rule.
Yeah, boys rule. Yeah. Well, let's see. I guess the very last question I would have for you is a little bit about how do you think things have changed? Like, for example, there is, last night we were at the award ceremony, and I noticed that there were a lot of, I think that romance sometimes gets pegged, and I mean, it's one demographic, but like there were Asian American women that were winning awards, there were South Asians, African Americans, just a lot of people, and then there's a kind of a push with the own voices.
Yeah.
How do you think things have changed since you got your first book deal in 1994?
It's opened up tremendously. You have African American women writing in every subgenre, from, you know, historicals to paranormal to mysteries to, you know, you name it. When I first started, there was like a handful of us. Now there are a lot of us. You've also got transgender. You've got the gender fluidity. You've got LGBTQ. You've got all of that. So it's opening windows. It's letting in people who may not be what publishing calls traditional, and offering them a chance to be trained in craft, to get their books out there. It's an awesome kind of thing.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for making
You're
the time
so
for
welcome.
us. And everybody go out, Beverly Jenkins, check her out, and get her into your book clubs.
I love it.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.